Hey everybody, this is Paul. It's Wednesday, July 10th. I had to look. That's pretty funny. So since I dropped my last video about a week ago, we took a trip to visit some friends up north. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I did get into the gym today and I did my weigh in and I was at 302 pounds. So that's 3 pounds down since the last time I weighed in a little over a week ago. And I had a little bit of a hiccup in the process of taking the trip. We went up to St. Augustine and the general area there to visit with a couple of friends on July 4th. And when we got there, I was walking up the stairs to the second floor where our hotel room was. I had luggage in my hand and I caught my toe on one of the steps and I fell and I wrenched both of my knees. So I had these big plans to use walking to supplant my gym activity while we were on vacation. And I had spoken about that in the last video. So fortunately, I kept the cane in the car and I do have another visit scheduled with my orthopedic guy in a couple of weeks. But after a few days of laying off of it and using the cane, I'm okay. I got into the gym today. That's why I weighed myself today. We got back on Sunday, but I was not up to being able to work out until today. I have to say that an important aspect of starting the YouTube channel and making the videos has a lot to do with accountability, and it also has to do with creating a community of people who I can help and who will help me. I'm looking at some notes now. I'm trying to be a little more focused than I was before. I don't want to be reading from a script, but I titled today's video, Why I Must Lose 100 Pounds, because not only am I learning about the best apps to use to make the videos, but I'm also learning about that there's tricks to get attention on YouTube. So the entire video is not going to be about why I must lose 100 pounds, but it certainly probably is more catchy than the title of the last video. I felt compelled to make that anyway because so many people reached out to support what I was doing, and I wanted to thank them and acknowledge them. Speaking of which, I've been in contact with my friend Patty. She's up in Ohio for the summer with her husband Dick, and she's a certified coach of Dr. Bosworth's. And by the way, Dr. Annette Bosworth, she's in Tampa. She goes by the moniker Dr. Boz, B-O-Z. And Patty asked me if I was checking my glucose and my ketones every day, and I had to admit to her, I've got keto sticks, which are the urine sticks that sit on the back of the toilet, and sometimes I use them and sometimes I don't. And this is a ketogenic diet program, so you got to be doing that. And Dr. Boz talks about that all the time. You got to measure, otherwise you're kidding yourself about whether you're really doing what you say you're doing. So I told Patty, I said, listen, I'm a little bit of a stubborn mule when it comes to receiving certain types of instruction. And then I talked to my friend Kevin, who I mentioned in my last video. He lives down near Tampa. And last I heard, he was going to a Dr. Boz Tuesday morning support meeting for the first time yesterday. And since before that, he had decided to get a Keto Mojo device, which I just ordered yesterday on Amazon for $50. It allows you to test anytime you want your glucose levels and your ketone levels. And Dr. Boz talks about this in her Keto Continuum workbook, and she always talks about it in the videos. And she calls it the Dr. Boz ratio, and it basically means that you want your glucose to be, I'm looking at notes, you want your glucose to ketone ratio to be 80 or less, and that will generally put most people into a weight loss zone. If you can get it to 40 or less, you'll not only be in the weight loss zone, but you'll also be in a zone for what they call autophagy. And autophagy is where your body starts scouring damaged cell particulate and consuming it in lieu of looking for other sources of energy. So it's a self-healing thing, which relates a lot to why historically we've all always heard that fasting is a very long held practice throughout the ages. And that's just a fancier term for how it actually works. Literally, autophagy, the root of that word stands for self-eating, where your body eats itself, but it only eats the damaged cell particulate. So it's a great way to raise your immunity, to make your body more dynamic. Anyway, so that's arriving supposedly tonight. So on the next video, I will have some readings for you about that. So I'm really excited that Kevin is taking charge of his own health the way I'm trying to. And we had a good conversation the other day, which of course led me to ordering the Keto Mojo along with the conversation with Patty. But Kevin bought a bike. He started doing a sardine fast. I can't bring myself to do a sardine fast. I will probably get to it, and you can rest assured that I'll talk about that when I do. But something that I stumbled on before I really started following Dr. Boz was just this notion that if the ketogenic diet targets, say, 80% of your calories coming from fat, and you can quibble about whether it's 70 or 85 or whatever, if 80 is that, and maybe 20% or thereabout is from protein, and you're trying to keep your carbs somewhere between 0 and 10%, maybe it's at 5%, fat's the primary driver. So I had just, again, in my stumbling that I had mentioned, I think in the first video, I had come across this notion last year of, well, what if I just put butter in my coffee, and then in the afternoon and the evening, I just use decaf coffee, and the coffee is basically a delivery mechanism for the butter. So I'm consuming 100% fat. And I lost weight when I did that. It was hard to do it. And my friends locally laughed at me. We'd go out to dinner and I would just order coffee and butter. But Dr. Boz, in one of her videos, I stumbled across in the last few days, actually talked about that while sardine fasting is superior than butter fasting because it includes protein and a higher level of omega-3 fats. The best way to fast is to do a straight water fast, but she also advises people don't go straight to that. You got to get yourself fat adapted. And fat adapted means, in this context, that you've done keto long enough so that when you don't have the availability of any carbohydrates, your body can switch. And it can switch in both directions. It can switch back and forth between deriving energy from glucose or switching to ketones. And again, ketones get produced when your glucose is below a certain level, which brings your insulin down. And insulin's a real key to this whole discussion. Just looking at the timer here. I'm trying to keep this video closer to the time on the first one because I don't want to become overly long-winded. I'm pretty good at that, and I don't want to do that. I want y'all to be interested. So I want to give good titles that'll draw new viewers to look at my videos, and I want to keep the length short enough so I don't just drone on and on. So I'm being mindful. We're at the 4-minute mark at this point. So I wrote some notes, want to be a little more focused. I'm thrilled to death that I got back in the gym today. I felt pretty good. I was being very cautious. I met a really cool lady at the checkout desk on my way out. She lives locally here in the Villages. Linda, a little bit of a shout out to you. We had this amazingly engaged conversation about the fraud that is just everywhere in the medical field, the nutritional field, and politics. So we're like kindred souls. I can't wait till I'm able to introduce my wife to her because she said, amusingly to both of us, listen, here's my age. I'm at the point where I just don't give a damn anymore. When I see something that pulls the curtain back, like I think one of the analogies is welcome to your moment of meeting the Wizard of Oz, only to find out that he's just an old man behind the curtain. And that's the scam of the medical industry. And I promised you we would talk more about people who've taught me that. And they're all credible people that are either MDs or they're specialists, cardiologists, research scientists. And that's been a big part of my mission on YouTube. I'm always interested in different points of view, but I'm always checking what somebody's background and credentials are. And the best thing of all is to find out what was it that changed their point of view that caused them to look deeper for the real truth. And, this is actually at the end of my notes, but I referred to this in the last video. The real truth about heart disease and why I must lose 100 pounds, let's get back to that, is if I don't, I'm going to die early. The truth is smoking, obesity, lack of exercise, toxins, both in the environment and with what we put in the body, is what leads to heart disease and early demise. So they can say, yeah, heart disease is the number one killer. But when they say that cholesterol is the cause of heart disease, it's BS. Cholesterol is a component of the structure of every cell in your body. And one of the downfalls of taking statins is you're treating what you think is a symptom. And part of why that happens, I've had some of these doctors talk about this, is that inflammation, which comes from a bunch of things, but substantially from insulin, which comes from too much carbohydrate, aka glucose, in your system. Diabetes is a tremendous driver of inflammation. So diabetes causes people to have arthritis. It causes them to have heart disease. And there's a pill for insulin, but there's not a pill for inflammation specifically. So, I'm just trying to say that I know, and as my good friend Jamie said to me years ago, hey, Paul, how many 80-year-old obese people do you know? And the answer was, I don't know any. And like I said with my conversation with my good friend Kurt years ago, who visited me to talk to me about getting on a ketogenic diet, I wasn't ready. I understood it, and everybody has that moment, that epiphany where they go, okay, I've had enough. This is it. I'm not saying everyone needs to create a YouTube channel, but I think it's important to create a community of people who will support you. So I feel like I've done that with some of these doctors and YouTube video producers that I've talked about. But the real big benefit is that it caused me to be in contact with a lot of good friends and letting them know, no, I'm not kidding anymore. I'm going to do this. And like I said, they've been great. But I encourage you to, whatever steps you're at on your mission, make sure that you're bringing some people along for the ride to help encourage you and keep you accountable. So like I said, Patty was great. And then Kevin said, well, here's how you go get the device. I was like, another couple of epiphanies. Oh, right. I don't know everything. I think I do. Some of my closer friends know that I have that streak in me. So let me share with you what some of the things that are consistent between what I hear from different medical people that are pro-ketogenic and pro-carnivore. Some people are pure carnivore. Some people are what they call animal-based. Some people prefer to eat plants. That was me. I really don't enjoy eating animals. I never have. And I had to get past that because I had to decide, hey, at this point in your life, Paul, what's more important? To get on your moral high horse about being a vegan? And that was part of my struggles. I didn't know enough about nutrition to understand that was a slippery slope challenge to provide the right nutrition for myself without using animal products. And I finally decided, you know what? If eating animals will help extend my life, that's more important than whatever moral nonsense I was creating in my own head about why I was a vegan. But, coming back to what's consistent about these different people advising, whether it be ketogenic, animal-based, carnivore, is they all talk about that you have to eat real foods. And I just cuffed the phrase with Linda as I was talking to her this afternoon. And I said, the key guide word is, if it comes out of the ground or it walks on the ground. I suppose if it swims in the water, that would be included too. I just don't like seafood. It's the challenge of the sardine fasting. Something that hasn't been prepared. And we talked about how apparently 70% of the consumption of the modern American diet is from processed foods. I call them manufactured foods. And that's a disaster because evolutionarily, the body was not developed to handle those kind of foods. So, eat real foods. High fat, moderate protein, minimal carbs, no refined or manufactured foods, no sugar, no seed oils. That's another topic. Seed oils, corn oil, canola oil, sesame oil. They're all toxic. They're manufactured in production plants that look like petroleum plants. And in fact, the story is that canola oil, there's not even a thing called a canola plant. It's actually a rapeseed plant. Interesting name, right? But the Canadian government, hence the name canola, created that product as a lubricant for use in military vehicles during World War II. And then the war ended, and somebody said, well, what do we do with all this stuff? No BS. It's stuff that you can't make up. And they decided to sell it as a product for human consumption. Seed oils are bad in every way. They're manufactured with toxic chemicals and high heat, but they're a leading cause of inflammation. They have the inverse omega-6 to omega-3 thing going on. I sat with my primary care physician, who's a very nice fellow. I like him a lot, but I don't think he's on the right part of the curve with learning about what we're talking about here. I asked him last year, hey, doc, isn't the real concern to reduce inflammation and avoid becoming diabetic? And he didn't hesitate. I got to give him credit for that. But I ordered some blood tests after learning more things recently, and he didn't know what to do with them. He's still stuck inside the box. I ordered a C-reactive protein test, which is a good marker or determinant, a reader of the level of inflammation in your body. And then my new cardiologist, who I inherited because the guy I was going to, not that he was any genius, moved to another practice. And I had him look at the C-reactive protein part of my blood work. And he said, yeah, but it doesn't determine where the inflammation is. And I said, yeah, I had heard that, but I'm trying to get to the root causes of my heart disease. And I thought of something that I've heard from a few different people, which is that if there's not a drug to treat a symptom, they just don't talk about it. What the hell is up with that? Well, I guess it's human nature. People spend 8 to 10 years becoming a doctor, and then they just fold into the corporate box. And what a shame. I'm looking forward to becoming a patient of Dr. Gymnatis's in Orlando next year. I think I mentioned that earlier. He has videos. He always talks about eating whole food, and that's the cure. And he always talks about how statins and stents should be the last thing that you're looking to do as a doctor. So I think that's a pretty good amount of catching up with you and letting you know what's still percolating in my mind and how I'm moving forward, taking my care of my health and losing the weight. As always, I really do appreciate you watching the video and supporting the channel. I didn't do this for a commercial purpose, but then I realized, yeah, you got to ask people to support the channel by subscribing, liking the video, offering any comments. I thank all the people who've made comments so far. It's very interesting. People come at you with different levels of experience, and some people are just looking to engage someone who's trying to do the same thing they're doing. And that's been like the expansion of my community. That's amazing. So many things about doing this that I didn't think about a lot. And then share these videos whenever you think appropriate. Again, thank you. As always, I wish all of you a great day. See you soon.